Back again with another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast with you as always. One of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. We're talking Royals baseball. We're talking the end of what was a surprising and great season here today. Why did the Yankees win this series? We'll get into it. Where do the Royals get better? How about the name Kevin Seitzer? Have you heard that he could be available or is available? What needs to change for this ball club? We're talking about it right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
This is the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. The Royals season has come to an end, Rany. We were hoping that we were going to have at least one more round of playoff baseball to talk about. We were hoping we were going to get a Game 5 from Cole Reagans. All of a sudden, I have Lucas Erceg starting. From Cole Reagans, in Yankee Stadium. We didn't get it. The season is over. It was a great year. What do you think?
It's a weird feeling, Soren. This is the first time since I was 9 years old in 1984 that the Royals made the postseason and did not play in the final game of the year. Right? The three times, and it's only been three times before this year that they made the playoffs. They won 2 World Series and lost Game 7 of the World Series. It's a strange feeling. This is, I guess, how the other half lives, right? I mean, the Royals, they had a 3-3 postseason record. Like they didn't, play terribly. They had a 500 record in the playoffs, which, they were a median postseason team. But this is what happens. It's a brutal tournament. 12 teams enter, 11 teams go home early, and the Royals, or at least 10 teams go home early, I guess, and the Royals were one of them. It was frustrating and disappointing, in part because they didn't get blown out, right? They lost, and I think lost fairly, but they lost by the narrowest of margins to the New York Yankees, and change a couple of things in the series. They could have won it, or they could have won it, but that's the nature of short series. That's the nature of postseason baseball. The Royals got all the breaks in 2014 and 2015. They didn't get all the breaks this year, and that's all it took.
Yeah. Listen, it was a great year. They came a long, long way in a short order of time. I do agree. Some of the things we've talked about before, that the club, probably wasn't as bad as they looked last year. Right. So like we talk about from 56 wins, we always say from 56 wins. That is technically you are what your record says you are. Yeah. Bill Parcells said many years ago, but they were probably better than that. But man, a lot of ground was made up. And I think the most important thing was there's a belief in the overall structure of the organization, right? There's a belief in John Sherman. There's a belief in J.J. Piccolo. There's a belief in Matt Quatrero. There's a belief in the analytics side. There's a belief that they're listening to the analytics side. There, is a belief in their development side. There is a belief in their coaching. Like, I think the biggest thing that we get from this, not only one, getting the team back into the playoffs, but you feel like we have confidence. We don't have to sit, at least for a while, and be like, well, are we going to fire the general manager? Are we going to fire the manager? Like, they should be able to now have all of that out of their way and just move forward and build a baseball organization.
Yeah, the only thing I would disagree there is, in terms of what they proved this year, is he said that they could that they can develop. The development side, I think the jury is still out, because we haven't really talked much about the minor leagues this year, which is a credit to the major league team. But the minor league season was still a bit of a disappointment. But I think that's also one of those areas that it takes more than a year to turn the ship around. But in everything else you said, I think
I want to be clear. When I say they could develop, they got good innings out of Daniel Lynch. They got good innings out of Chris Bubich. No, you are 100% right. We don't know that the far off and that all the draft picks are right and going to work, and they're going to be pumping 3, 4, 5 guys into the big leagues. In fact, that's probably one of the things we'll get to a little bit later on. But it seems a little bit barren.
Right.
I mean, like right now as to what's coming. But we did see guys get better.
Yes,
right?
and I think you almost have to split what we call development. What we used to call development is almost two things. One is player acquisition, and one is player transformation, I guess I would call it, because in this new era of baseball, you can transform players, right? With data and with high speed video and scouting excellence. That to me is where you merge scouting excellence and data excellence to make players better. It's the player acquisition side, drafting, Latin American development. The jury is still out. I think we're hopeful that they've gotten better because early signs from Latin America look positive for their last two signing classes, but those guys are like 17 years old. But on the player transformation side, right, which is becoming a more and more important part of developing a winning organization, that's where you talk about Daniel Lynch, who 3 months ago we had written off as kind of, he'll never be an effective starter. Will he ever be an effective major league pitcher? I think he answered those questions. Yeah. Bubich, you mentioned. And obviously, I mean, Cole Reagans is the coup de grace here. I mean, that's the ultimate in player transformation. So, yeah, I mean, in all of those areas, the thesis of this organization has, I think, changed over the past year. In some ways, that's more impressive than the record, right? Everything you said, we hoped that John Sherman and the ownership group, when they came in, there was reasons for optimism. And to me, there was always a disconnect between what the ownership looked like on paper, that they seemed committed to winning, committed to data, committed to spending if necessary. Like all the signs were there, but there were no results on the field. Yeah. And with JJ, it was like, he had the willingness to try things, but he also was saddled with, a past which fairly, or in my case, unfairly, was, thrown on him probably too much. We didn't know what to expect. And where we are now, it's so much easier to say, oh, okay, ownership. Yeah, well, you were right about ownership being this is a strong ownership group for a Major League Baseball team. It just took time to see the results manifest on the field. JJ turns out might actually be a really, really good general manager because he can take the old school scouting, and he's shown a willingness to embrace new ideas from other organizations, admit that they didn't have all the answers, and bring the data in and meld the two. And we saw the manifestation of that this year. So not only was this a fun year, an unexpected year, in that sense, one of the most enjoyable years I've ever had as a fan, but it also makes you optimistic that the long-term foundation of the organization is in as good a place as it's been. I mean, you could be really aggressive and say since Ewing Kauffman passed away. I mean, there's reason, when from top to bottom, from ownership down to management, down to the field, not just front office management, but like Matt Quatrero and some of the coaches that they've got. This is a really strong group that gives me reason for optimism for the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's a lot of work to be done. We'll be talking a lot about that throughout the course of the off season, and maybe just kind of touch on it a little bit here tonight. But I want to dive into why they lost to the Yankees. Like what would be your biggest points that you would say this is why they lost?
So, it's easy. We could start by the reasons they didn't lose. If you just compare the Royals' offensive output and the Yankees' offensive output in those 4 games, right? The Royals had a slightly better batting average. They hit, I mean, neither team hit, for a good average. The Royals hit 237, the Yankees hit 220. And you think, oh, well, the Yankees had tons of power. The Yankees hit 3 home runs, the Royals hit 2. Right? Like the Yankees slugged 339 in the series. The Royals slugged 319. Now, that one extra home run they got, if you count that as John Carlos Stanton's home run, was a game changer and a series changer, right? So it was an extremely important home run. But the Yankees did not win the series by just overpowering the Royals, right? The obvious answer is the Yankees drew 27 walks and had a 355 OBP. The Royals drew 7 walks in 4 games and at a 278 OBP. And you can criticize the fact that they walked 27 batters in 4 games, and that's terrible, but that's also not indicative of what the Royals did all season. They had good command as a team, but also a testament to a Yankees lineup that led the league in walks. But I think you can definitely focus on the 7 walks they drew in 4 games and say they didn't have base runners on base to take advantage of the rare times, that they did hit for power. If anything, I think in some ways they were fortunate in that the Yankees did not hit well with runners in scoring position in the series, and that's what kept it as close as it was. And the Royals got unlucky with the balls they put in play. I think in the final game against Garrett Cole, people were talking afterwards about, Garrett Cole was an ace and he pitched like an ace. Did he though? I mean, he struck out, 4 batters in the game, 5 at the most. They hit the ball.
I think the Royals helped him.
Well,
I think it'd be real interesting to see what he does in the next round.
Yeah, I mean, he struck out 4 batters. I believe of the 8 hardest hit balls by the Royals in the game, 7 of them were outs. Like Bobby Witt had the second hardest hit ball of the season for him, 114.7 in his second plate appearance. And it was a line drive just right at the left fielder. If that's anywhere except right at a fielder, it's at least a double, maybe a triple. He almost certainly scores. If the wind is just not blowing in, forget the stadium. The wind is not blowing in. Kyle Isbell has one of the great, plate appearances, great moments in Royals history. Like they came that close, even with all the base runners that they put on base for the Yankees, because they were able to get out of a lot of jams. But ultimately, the Yankees had so many more opportunities to score because they had so many more base runners. And, in that final game, once I'm trying to think, trying to remember now. Juan Soto, I think it was in game 3 that Juan Soto scored after a walk.
Giancarlo Stanton drove him in.
Right. Exactly. So, when the final game, none of their walks came around to score. But in game 3, I think at least one of the walks scored. I think one of them moved a runner up who later scored. So, the walks got them in the end. And really, game 1 in some ways was the turning point of the series because the Royals scored 5 runs and weren't able to pull out a win in that game.
Yeah, 5 of the walks in the series scored.
5. Okay.
And 2 of them drove in a run. Right. One time it was driving in someone who had walked.
Right. Game 1 was very sloppy.
But yeah, there were 7 runs, that you could attribute to the walks being directly a part of. And that is it. I mean, I agree with some of the comments in the chat room that say, listen, I think the Royals were trying to make sure that they didn't leave any fat pitches that ended up over the wall. Right. I do think that's part of it as well. But it's still a walk. Right. Whatever your reason is, you're still putting people on base. And so that is something that I think that they've got to get better at that and not issuing the walks.
And ultimately, again, it's not just about, they should have, maybe they were right to pitch them as carefully as they did. My issue isn't with the walks they gave up. It's with the walks they didn't draw themselves. Right.
Well,
and in the 9th inning, their final inning of the season, down 2 runs to Luke Weaver. In that inning, they saw 9 pitches total. One of them was in the strike zone for sure. 2 of them were borderline. Might have been called strikes, probably, but I'm not sure. They were around the corner. 6 of the 9 pitches were clearly outside the strike zone. They swung at all but 1 pitch in that inning. Yeah. Right now, okay, Salvador Perez did bad in that inning. That's true. But Vinny Pasquantino also swung at ball, what should have been ball 1 and ball 2, and instead were strike 2 and strike 3. So that is something, and this is not a new problem. This is a generations long problem. And I do hope, if there's a silver lining to this loss, that seeing that on display in the postseason and seeing the contrast with what their opponent did will drill this point home, the importance of making plate discipline a more prominent feature for this organization, because almost every other way they're doing well. Like, they're trending upwards, certainly. But even in this, remarkable season for the Royals, they were second to last in the league in walks drawn. Like that, it's the one phenomenon that resists every single attempt to fix. and they really need to address it head on.
They had 13 walks in 6 playoff games. Right, that's just not enough.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, and I think it is something that is, as you acquire more players, it's exponential, right? One guy on base makes it easier to get the next guy on base, which makes it easier, and so the Royals just they they've got to put every effort into that, and it's got to start down at the lowest levels. I mean, I think also the other thing, and they're finally doing this with walks, power. Like power hitters get walked, power hitters get pitched carefully too. And I think they've never put the emphasis on power that other teams do. And, that has changed. Caglione, that they drafted this past year, obviously it was the biggest bat that they could get their hands on. And so I'm optimistic that is changing, but that's going to take a little time for us to see. And, on base percentage is not cheap anymore. It's not Moneyball 25 years ago, where it's like, oh, we can go get Scott Hatterberg. Like if you can get on base, you're paid accordingly now. So it really is something that they've got to develop and or pay full market value. The good news is they won't have to pay over market value anymore because they are a contending team.
Yeah, no, this is true. And I'm hopeful that, as much as we saw these problems manifest at the major league level, that if they were to make an organizational focus on plate discipline, you would start to see it with their minor league players first. And so while it's a small sample size, the reality is their 2 best hitting prospects, not counting Caglione because he joined, he played for a month, right? But their 2 best hitting prospects, Blake Mitchell and Carter Jensen. Blake Mitchell drew 80 walks in 111 games this year in the minor leagues. Carter Jensen drew 72 walks in 125 games. Last year, he drew 92 walks. Like, those guys have patience. And, not coincidentally, they also hit for power, right? They both hit 18 home runs this year, which, especially for, teenagers in the low minor leagues, is really impressive. So, like, those 2 guys are kind of the model of, like, an old school, quote unquote, Moneyball type player. And while they haven't done it yet above AA, like, the Royals have not historically had even prospects who fit the profile of either of those guys. So I'm hopeful that is a sign that they are focusing on that, both in terms of drafting these guys because they demonstrated plate discipline in high school and developing it, at the professional level.
Yeah, I agree. I'd agree with this too. Need better outfield. Yes,
yes,
that's part of it. I mean, as we look at it right now, I think a Melendez-Renfroe platoon is one of them. Isbell in center is one. And then I think you're looking for an outfielder again.
You have to. Yeah, if you're going to sign a free agent outside the organization, I think, one of the luxuries, one of the benefits of doing so well with the free agent starting pitchers last year, you still have Lugo under control. We'll talk about Wacom maybe, in a future episode in terms of what they do with him. But I don't think starting pitching is as much of a focus for next year. You have Kyle Wright potentially coming back. Chris Bubich could move into the rotation. You have some options. There's nothing in the organization right now that I would be, happy with starting in a corner outfield spot on opening day next year. You can fake it in one position, like you said, maybe Melendez and Renfroe. But yeah, if there's one targeted position, whether it's free agency, whether it's a trade, you've got to get a corner outfielder who can rake.
Yeah, for sure. We're proudly brought to you by our friends here at Gann Asphalt and Concrete for 30 years. Kansas City's best when it comes to solving any and all parking lot issues. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns cold. Weekends are booking up fast. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Rany, the other thing is, we talk about on base, but did they is one of the mistakes they made not putting some of the guys that could have gone over the wall? Paul DeYoung, Hunter Renfroe, should they have played Freddie Fermin? Some of the guys that they counted on to get there. I know the guys DeYoung and Renfroe were cold, but everybody was cold in September. So
Right.
I don't know where that would be the damning grace to them. But should they have done something different as far as who they played?
It's the one thing that I look back on the series with the Yankees. It's like the what if is the fact that Paul DeYoung and Freddie Fermin literally did not appear in a game. Either one of them did not appear in a single postseason game. And you have to wonder, was that for a team and for a manager who was so good about mixing and matching players to match their strengths with what the situation called for? That surprised me. I think it was it game 3 against the Yankees where, I believe it was game 3 where Maikel Garcia batted, with them down a run in the ninth inning, and I thought for sure this is the perfect chance to get Paul DeYoung up there and just hope he runs into one. Right, he batted with 1 out in the bottom of the ninth inning. The last time the Royals had a postseason game, down 1 run in the bottom of the ninth inning with 1 out and nobody on base, Alex Gordon hit a home run that, to my mind, is the most important home run in Royals history and turned around the World Series in 2015. They could have used a home run there, and they stuck with Maikel Garcia, who had a good series, but even he had 6 hits, but I think all 6 of them were singles. Okay, if he singles, they're great, but I would have, if you're going to have Paul DeYoung on the roster, that's why you have him on the roster. So yeah, a little bit surprised they didn't do it. Would it have made a difference? In all likelihood, no, but we'll never know. But yes, Pop in the postseason, because it is so hard to string together lots of base runners against postseason pitching because nobody's using their bad pitchers. Power becomes more important. And in the series, there was not a lot of power. There was 3 home runs from the Yankees, 2 from the Royals, and of those 5, at least 2 of them were the cheap pop up of the Yankee Stadium variety. So I'm not saying it was a mistake because it was hard to hit home runs, but at the same time, the whole series, the Yankees scored 13 runs. I think the Royals scored 11, I want to say. No, I think it was 14 to 12 was the final run differential. A single home run would have made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice to have seen at least DeYoung get a chance. And Freddie Fermin, to me, it wasn't even so much as bad. I mean, yeah, he sucked in September. Everybody sucked in September. To me, we could argue, it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. We could argue that Freddie Fermin's defense was what the Royals missed more than his offense. That having him catching and Salvi at first base with Yuli Gurriel on the bench, it's not so much that they needed Freddie's bat over Yuli Gurriel's as his glove behind the plate. I mean, it's a kind of ironic, but this series was decided as much on the base paths as with the home run. And shockingly, that favored the Yankees. The Yankees stole a game, literally game 1, with a stolen base. Maybe they stole it because the umpires screwed up, but they got that steal there. And
high throw from Salvi.
Yeah, but a good throw, even an average throw, there's no question he's out. And with Freddie Fermin led the American League in percentage of base runners caught stealing. Salvi was a good catcher this year. He was not a great catcher. Freddie, though, was. But then what's interesting, so the Yankees were 4 for 4 in stolen bases in the series. I mean, Giancarlo Stanton was doing his Billy Butler homage with the completely random stolen base, his first steal, I think, in 4 years, they said. Didn't ultimately matter, but kind of embarrassing. But to me, it was on the other side, it was the stolen bases the Royals didn't have. And, kind of strangely for a team that sometimes is too aggressive on the bases. But I wonder, a lot of people I know talked about Bobby Witt not trying to steal second base in the 8th inning of game 3. And then Salvi hit a single, right? That moved him to third base, but he did not score. I did not object to that, in part because Luke Weaver is extremely hard to run on. In his entire career, he's only allowed 13 stolen bases, and I think he's had 9 runners thrown out. But also, you could argue, would they have even pitched to Salvi? I don't know. But ultimately, I think the risk there was just too great. But part of that's because Bobby has not been a great, right?
Yeah, he's fast, but he's not good at he's one of those guys that's just always been able to do it off raw speed. And he's never really, figured out the finer points of base running. And that needs to be something that he works on this offseason. I don't know how you go about doing it.
Two words for you: Rusty
Video.
Cruz.
Yeah.
Just get Rusty to. We've seen Rusty work with far slower guys, so maybe that's the solution. But I think I think they were spooked by that. Like ultimately, I think Bobby almost shut him down on the base pass in August and September. Like the caught stealings were becoming such a problem that his stolen base attempts dropped significantly. And then he didn't go, and I think that they were worried that he was going to get thrown out. But the other one, the one that that I think in retrospect maybe they regret more, in Game 4, in the 6th inning, everyone remembers the little fracas at second base. Kind of the homage to the 1970 series here. Both benches clear. I mean, I have to be honest here and say, Michael Garcia probably didn't handle that very well, and maybe he got hit in the course of play, but I think he was being a little bit of a sore loser there. But here's the thing about that whole play: why was Michael Garcia still on first base? Because he had a phenomenal season stealing bases, and he had just singled. Massey's at the plate now. Massey's not a huge double play guy, but there you're thinking about even just trying to get a run. What ends up happening even if he'd just been running on the pitch, they wouldn't have been able to turn 2. So instead, they get a double play, and then immediately Bobby singles, Vinny doubles him home. If Michael is either stolen second base or had been running on the pitch, and it was the 4th pitch of the at bat. Now the second and third pitches Massey fouled off, so it might have just been bad luck, bad timing. He hadn't had a chance to steal yet. But if he had been on second base instead of a double play, Witt drives him in, Vinny doubles, and so you get one more run, and you only have 1 out in the inning instead of 2. The whole game changes. So that's the one to me I almost regret more. It's just kind of ironic for a team that's always been built on aggressive base running and successful base running. Lost to the New York Yankees in part because the Yankees got a critical stolen base when they needed it, and the Royals did not.
Yeah, no, and that is an issue. Then I do think Witt's got to be better. He's got to take the time to study the pitchers and what their moves are and be able to get better jumps. I mean, his jumps aren't good enough. Garcia, I agree with you. He had a phenomenal year as far as success rate, but his foot speed doesn't measure that fast. He's just really good at it. And if he's not, he's just really good at knowing when to go. So if he's not going, he doesn't think he can get there. But to your point, running on the pitch,
it's possible that it wasn't a good match. But it's just and obviously in retrospect, I didn't expect Massey to hit a double play there. The other thing is that it could have been even worse in the sense that ball was right down the line. The first baseman was only there because he was holding Michael Garcia on. All right, John Birdie, who no first base experience, had an impressive series defensively. But if Michael is on second base, Birdie's not playing that close to the bag. That ball might be a double down the line, and then suddenly you have 4 base runners in a row. You've tied the game. But that's the nature of postseason ball. One game, 1 inning can change everything, right? I mean, how many teams in 2014 and 2015, look back and be like, if we had only done this or that, we would have beat the Royals. Well, now we know what it feels like a little bit.
Yeah. Can we also add Lucas Erceg? I mean, let's just put him in the 9th inning. I know the leverage thing, but that's great. It doesn't work. It didn't work again in the final game of the series. They put him in and he gave up a run. I mean, he
did. He also gave up a run in the 9th when he came in the 9th inning as a closer in Game 2 and immediately gave up a homer to Jazz Chisholm. So
at a time that he had a cushion and could pump fastballs.
Sure. I mean, he came in the 5th and got out of a jam. They'd already let run in. We should pull him up, pulled walk a batter sooner. But I mean, I was shocked that it was Erceg, and I was impressed just in the sense of, wow, Couture understands, there's no tomorrow. You go to a guy you would never consider in that situation. Obviously, the 6th inning did not work. He did give up a run. It was only one run, but in a game where runs were at a premium. I'm not going to say based on one outing against a great playoff team that, oh, Lucas Ursig can't pitch the sixth. Yes, there is something to the idea that, if you have a routine, probably better to stick with it. Ultimately, I don't think it mattered one way or the other. You were going to have to, they were going to go to Ursig at some point. And maybe he just didn't have it that day. His command wasn't great. I like the aggressiveness. It maybe backfired a little, but I don't think that's what that didn't cost them the game, I guess.
No, it didn't, because the Royals didn't get another run, but it would have been nice. I mean, you don't know how people, how they take at bats when they're only down one run instead of being down two. So I don't like it. And he's not been effective at it. And so stop doing it. I mean, you can look at his numbers. He's better in the ninth inning. And I think it's because he gets to go through all the prep and everything. And furthermore, this should be rendered moot because either you believe in Zerpa or you don't, or get other guys that can do that job as well. You shouldn't need your closer. Like, I think, we talk about it because that's where they were, but now as they head to next year, they're going to have a press conference tomorrow. And we're going to hear what JJ Piccolo has to say. Last year, he said, look, I got to get him weapons in the bullpen. And he went out and he got some guys. That needs to be said the same thing again, because, now you've got the start of a bullpen. Okay, now it just needs to be finished off. And the reality is you should be able to have a closer and have somebody else who can come in and strike somebody out that you feel confident can do it. So, I'd like that to be finished, right? The bullpen to be finished before next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this season, one of the take-home lessons from it, though, is that you don't have to have a finished bullpen at the beginning of the year. Like, yes, it'd be ideal if you do, but like having a weak bullpen in April is no impediment to having a playoff caliber bullpen in October. This wasn't a great bullpen, but it was not a bad bullpen. The Royals there were 3 games in the playoffs. The Royals had a lead after 6 innings. They won all 3 of them. The problem was, and there was only one game where they were losing. The last game after 6 innings, they lost. They were unable to come back. The problem was the 2 games that they were tied after 6 innings. And a team that in 2014 and 2015 won literally every single game that was tied after 6 innings, lost both of them. But in both cases, they lost by giving up 1 run between the 7th and the 9th. But they scored none. Right. So as much as I look back at the 2015 Royals as like the lockdown bullpen, if anything, the 2014 team had the lockdown bullpen. The 2015 team had a lockdown bullpen, but had an offense that just kept erupting for runs late in the game and kept coming back. The problem with this team in the playoffs was the problem they had in all of September. They just could not score. They had 1 rally in the entire series, really in both series. They put up a crooked number, I think, 1 time, in the playoffs. Maybe twice. Maybe Melendez's little cheap home run with a man on. That was the other one. But like that's ultimately the problem. They just could not score in the late innings against the Yankees, and that doomed them, no matter what their bullpen did.
Yeah, no, with that, we come back around to see point A. All right, well, let's talk about hitting when we come back here. I want to talk about, someone near and dear to your heart. We'll talk about the fact that Kevin Seitzer is available. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? They've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Kevin Seitzer let go along with several other coaches in Atlanta. Reunion time?
Soren, you don't get an infinite number of cracks at your dream coming true. I've been waiting a long time for this. And, sort of somewhat ironically, the day that the Royals had their season end prematurely, we also got the news that after 10 years, he was the longest tenured hitting coach, I believe, in baseball. Kevin Seitzer was let go by the Atlanta Braves. And I have a history with Kevin, obviously, first as a player, because he had that amazing rookie season that 90% of the time he wins Rookie of the Year, but he did that the year Mark McGwire hit 49 home runs. But he hit 323 as a rookie and got on base at an absurd rate, an OBP over 400. In 1989, he drew 100 walks. No Royal has drawn even 90 walks, I believe, since then. 1989 was also the last year that the Royals had an above average number of walks. They ranked in the top half of the American League. It's been 35 consecutive years. They have not. They've been in the bottom half of the league. So just as a player, I liked his style as a player, right? That he understood the strike zone. But beyond that, he was the Royals hitting coach for 4 years. And his 2011 season, in retrospect, is one of the more impressive seasons you'll see from any hitting coach. That was the year he got Jeff Francoeur to be like one of the best hitting right fielders in baseball. After, Francoeur had come up as like a 21-year-old and was a complete phenom for like 2 months before people realized, oh, this guy will swing at anything. And, every year after that as an Atlanta Brave, he just went downhill. And, everybody knew Dayton Moore loved him, and it was inevitable that he would bring him to Kansas City. And, sure enough, he did. And what we didn't expect was that he would be so good. So, for 1 year he was good, but not just him. Melky Cabrera had, 44 doubles as a center fielder, and he completely revamped and it's really saved Alex Gordon's career. Like, I'm not saying Alex Gordon wouldn't have turned it around without him, but Alex Gordon 4 years into his career was a significant disappointment. Part of that was, the position he was playing. He got to move from third base to left field. Nobody expected to become one of the best defensive left fielders of the century. So that was not Kevin Seitzer's doing. But he turned Alex Gordon into an offensive force in his first season. I mean, Alex Gordon's 2011 season, the totality of it, he was worth over 7 wins. It was basically the best, I believe, the best season by a Royals position player between Carlos Beltran and Bobby Witt this year. That team had 4 guys hit 44 doubles because those 3, they're the first team and only team in Major League history of all 3 outfielders hit 40 doubles in a season. Billy Butler also hit 44. All 4 guys. The only team in Major League history to have 4 guys hit 44 doubles or more. 2012 was a disaster, and he got fired at the end of the year. But what was notable was that almost everybody on that team, 2013, was a downturn. The Royals, managed to win 86 games, but that was mostly a pitching renaissance. And Baseball Prospectus, back in right after Seitzer had been fired, 12 years ago, ran an article. Russell Carlton ran a really interesting analytical article I remember reading at the time, where he tried to evaluate hitting coaches by basically their effect on hitters, right? By looking at every single hitter that worked under that hitting coach and compared their performance under that hitting coach with what they did before or after. And obviously, when you're looking at one guy, there could be a lot of factors. But if the guys worked with 30, 40, 50 different players, you feel like all the average things will, they'll even out, right? The guy who, declined because he was getting old might be counteracted by the guy who was young and improved naturally or whatever. The point being is you have a large enough sample size, you can evaluate using sophisticated statistical techniques. What he found, like according to his numbers, the number one hitting coach of the century at that time, I think, or actually, I didn't know. I think he looked from 1993 to 2012. It's a 20-year span. The number one hitting coach was Clint Hurdle. But as he said in the article, Clint Hurdle was mostly a hitting coach for the Colorado Rockies. And that's one where it's like, how much of that was the hitting coach? How much of it was the ballpark? Like, it's, as much as you try and tease that out, the fact that those guys got to move to Colorado, okay, it's possible. Clint Hurdle was probably a very good hitting coach, but maybe it's the ballpark. The number 2, 3, and 4 guys on the list all were only hitting coaches for 1 or 2 seasons. So now you're looking at small sample sizes. But among hitting coaches who didn't have a Colorado effect and who coached for at least 5 seasons, who was number 1 on that list? Well, Kevin Seitzer, according to his numbers, was worth about, this is the exact quote here, we see that Seitzer appears to be worth about 4.5 wins above replacement level, which is roughly on par with what we found. He had done a pitching coach study for Leo Mazzoni. And you recall Leo Mazzoni, who was the legendary pitching coach for the Atlanta Braves when they won 14 consecutive division titles. And, some of that, obviously, Glavine, Maddox, John Smoltz, those guys would have been great in any generation, but some of it was the pitching coach. He found after the 2012 season, and mind you, this is right after Kevin had just been fired by the Royals, he had been worth, by this primitive technique, 4.5 wins above replacement. That was 12 years ago. What happened after that? Seitzer got a job in Toronto with the 2014 Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, who I believe had been, I had written this down somewhere, I think they went from 7th or 8th in the league in runs scored to 4th in the league the 1 year he was there. And he left. They didn't fire him. He left because the Braves offered him a job. And so the Braves, who before they hired him before the 2015 season. They were coming off a season where they had ranked 14th in the National League in runs scored. Now, his first year they actually fell to 15th, and then 14th, and then 10th. Since 2018, the Braves have ranked 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, and then last year, 1st in runs. But not just 1st in runs last year, 1st in batting average, 1st on base, and then not just 1st in slugging average in last year, 1st in slugging average in the history of baseball. The 2023 Atlanta Braves slugged .501, the highest slugging average in the history of baseball. Their team OPS plus was 126. All right. Salvador Perez, when he hit 48 home runs, had a 128 OPS plus. So the Atlanta Braves of 2023 as a team basically hit like 9 Salvador Perez's in the lineup. Like, he got there, and the thing that really opened my eyes, Freddie Freeman and Eric Hosmer came up together the same year. They're the same age, came up in 2011. Hosmer was considered universally slightly better prospect. They were both top prospects, but Hosmer was considered better, had more power potential. That was the knock on Freddie, that he didn't have the potential for power. Now, Hosmer's rookie year with Kevin Seitzer was very promising. His sophomore year, he hit into unbelievably bad luck. His batting average on balls in play the first half of the season was like 200. And I think more than anything else, that is actually what got Kevin Seitzer fired, is that Eric Hosmer just hit into horrible luck. So 3 years later, Kevin Seitzer gets to work with Freddie Freeman. Look at Freddie Freeman's numbers from before and after he got Kevin Seitzer as his hitting coach. Freddie Freeman was a good hitter before Kevin Seitzer. He was basically Eric Hosmer. I mean, he hit 21, 23, 23, 18 home runs his first 5 years in the major leagues. The last of those years was his first year with Kevin Seitzer. Then he went from slugging 461, 471 to 569, 586, 505, 549, 640. Like, he became the hitter Eric Hosmer was supposed to become, a 30, 35 home run hitter every year. So the knock on Seitzer in Kansas City was he does not hit, Kevin Seitzer does not teach power. That was the report. Ned Yost was not enamored with his approach because it didn't lead to enough power, which is ironic because the Braves had the highest slugging average in Major League history last year. But like, he turned Freddie Freeman into a power hitter. So what happened this year? Well, they fell to 8th in the league in runs scored. Do you know how many injuries to that 2023 lineup the Braves had? Sean Murphy, their starting catcher, injured on opening day, tore his oblique muscle, was out 2 months, came back, was horrible. Ronald Acuna, defending league MVP, tore his ACL at the end of May. Ozzie Albies, I think he had a fractured toe in April, came back, then fractured his wrist in July. Michael Harris strained his hamstring, was spent 2 months on the IL, excuse me. I mean, that's like over. Oh, and then Austin Riley, their third baseman, fractured his hand in August. Like, more than half their lineup, of this record-setting lineup, was injured for at least 2 months out of the season. And with all that, they still finished 8th in the league in runs scored. They were not like a terrible offense. I look at what Kevin Seitzer's 2024 season was, and one comparison comes to mind above all. Andy Reid's last year in Philadelphia. After a decade of success, one horrible year, He got let go, even though everybody knew he was still at the top of his game. And
somewhat because they just needed a new. They're like, listen, we need a new voice, and
it totally makes sense. Everybody understood it.
New students,
right? But it was an opportunity for an enterprising team to show aggressiveness and get a guy who ordinarily would not be available. And Clark Hunt got on that plane and got his man, and it changed the trajectory of a franchise. John Sherman doesn't have to get on a plane because Kevin Seitzer still lives in Kansas City. And he had a tough year personally. His wife was diagnosed with colon cancer, and he had to take a leave of absence from the team. It's been a tough year for him. I saw a nice article. They interviewed him, after he was fired. He holds zero bitterness to the Braves. He's like, I don't blame Alex Anthopoulos at all for letting him go. But he's only 62 years old. I don't think he's ready to retire. And, I can't read his mind, but I would think that the opportunity to work close to home, be able to drive from his home to the stadium, there was a reason why that job was a good fit for him before. And I just think this is an incredible opportunity for the Royals to get what I consider to be the best hitting coach in the game. And I'm not even saying get rid of Alex Zumwalt. I don't think Alex Zumwalt deserves to be fired necessarily. I think Alex Zumwalt did great work in the minor leagues, but maybe that is, there's an opportunity here. If Kevin is interested in the major league hitting coach job, to make it work with Alex Zumwalt and Keone Durant, all those guys who've already been working in the minor leagues for a long time. If Kevin wants to take a step back and maybe work as a minor league roving and start, there's ways to make it fit. But I just feel like this man has way too much talent, and the fit geographically is way too good for the Royals to pass on this opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to make. They're not going to bring in 6 new hitters, Soren, but maybe they can make all the hitters they've got better across the board with a really good hitting coach.
I'm with you. And one of the things this comment says, was there any bad blood when he left here? No, I talked with Kevin Seitzer, and he has no ill will towards Kansas City or the Royals. I mean, it was I think it was entirely a Ned Yost decision. That did it. And so I think he'd be happy to come back here. I think that. I haven't talked to him. I should give him a call and ask him, right? But it's a little early, so I let a little time go by. But because I used to do pre games and post games with Seitzer. He's a great guy, absolutely as good as it gets. And I'm with you. One thing that baseball does really well above other sports is when a guy is talented and available, they get him in the front office, and then they figure out where they're going to use him. And that's what the Royals need to do. Is there is a guy who is a hitting guru, and you need to go get him and then figure it out once he's here, but don't let him go anywhere else. I'm 100% on that. And so to me, I think there's a spot for him now. If he says, listen, I want to be a hitting coach, and somebody's offering the hitting coach job and you won't move Zumwalt, that's a problem, because we've been through this now for a couple of years with Zumwalt, and the numbers aren't good enough. Right.
I mean, he got a lot of attention, and deservedly so, for turning MJ Melendez's career around in the minor leagues. But it's now been 3 years at the major league level, and MJ Melendez has the same weird sweet. It's easy to look at the numbers and just give up on him. But every time I watch him swing, I'm like, what would this guy do if he actually had a swing that looked normal, right?
Right.
And I mean, all season, I never want to bring up Kevin Seitzer on the show every single week, but all season, in the back of my head, I'm like, man, if we let this guy go, he's going to go to Atlanta, and Seitzer's going to get his hands on him, and it's going to be night and day, right? So now it's if you bring Kevin Seitzer, I'm not giving up on MJ. Now it's I'd like to see how this will go, right? So there's a lot of, there's, for a team that already improved by 30 games, how do you actually take another step forward? That's hard to do after you've improved 30 games. One way to do that is to bring in a guy that can potentially transform the guys that are already in your lineup.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Seitzer's the obvious decision to go there. All right. What else needs to change?
So
how about the fences? Let me just say, let me just say that they're not going to put $1 into messing with Kauffman Stadium, and they're trying to build a new one, so it's not going to happen. But should it? I say yes. I don't. They pushed the fences back out. I think they made a mistake. I think it's too hard to hit home runs in this ballpark, and they haven't hit well since, consistently hit well since Damon, Dye, Beltran, Sweeney, Randa. I mean, that's it. They had that one little pocket. Otherwise, I'm not buying it's the ball. We want a fair ballpark. It's not a fair ballpark, and it doesn't work. So they're not going to do it. But like when they build a new stadium,
I was going to say, to me, it's not so much. I don't think you change the current ballpark because I don't think it's worth it, and because the nature of the current ballpark is that it's actually a good hitter's park, but it's like really good for batting average and not good at all for power, right?
Right.
And I worry that if you bring in the fences to make it fair for home runs, it's actually going to turn it into a bandbox overall and make it even harder to develop pitching. Because you talk about that era from 95, I think it was, to 2004, with the fences were moved in 10 feet. And yeah, they had great offensive numbers, Sweeney, Randa, Beltran, all those guys. But like, did they develop a starting pitcher in that entire time? Okay, some of that was Aller Baird. But
anybody that had any ability, really?
It was a perfect storm of like no talent and a terrible context. But like, I mean, I don't want to go back to a day where a 5.05 ERA was like a good ERA for a start. I worry about that. But I do think when it comes to a new ballpark, that we need to have a talk about what do we want the character of the team to be. And I like a team that values athleticism and speed in the outfield, et cetera, et cetera. But you want to make it where if you develop power, you feel like that power is rewarded. And in this series, you didn't feel like that, right? I mean, the part of the problem was it doesn't hurt the prodigious power guys, right? Giancarlo Stanton's home run would have been a home run if they didn't have fences, but it does it. So it hurts the guy who can hit the ball 380 feet to left field, but not 450 feet. And maybe that's not something that's good for the Kansas City Royals. So yes, I think that's a conversation that they should definitely be having now about whatever stadium it is that they build.
Yeah. And we've also got the broadcast for the Royals. The Royals are going to get dumped by Bally's to the, I think, the sheer joy of all Royals fans out there.
And be careful what you wish for, because I don't know what's coming. That's the problem, right? I don't think I'm not sure the Royals know what's coming. That's the concern here.
I think they do. I for the last couple of spring trainings, I've had a chance to chat with John Sherman out there, and that it was very prevalent on his mind, the television contract, and something he wanted. And I hear from people that there's kind of this idea that maybe all the streaming rights are going to get brought in and be national. All the money will be shared. So that means Yankees streaming rights would be, shared evenly with the Royals. But they've been working on what their TV plan is. They've seen this coming for a while. And so I think they're ready. I think it will be better. I'll tell you what I think we're going to get in Kansas City. The New Orleans Hornets. I was talking with Jared Sutton, who is a scout for the New Orleans Hornets, lives here, is based out of Kansas City, still played at Mizzou, obviously. And they just got a new TV deal done, and it's over the air. All the games are on over the air TV. And so that's where, they went. That's where a number of the NBA teams are going. And I think it'll be what ultimately happens here. MLB will produce it, and they will get one of I think we may be back on 62 or 38 or, one of those secondary channels for one of the local affiliates that ends up being the home of the Royals.
Now, how does that affect them financially? Is it less money up front in terms of the rights, but
and I do mean the Pelicans. I'm sorry, I kept saying the Hornets. Yes, the Pelicans. Sorry. It means that they would have to go sell the commercials themselves.
Okay.
They would be their own, which is what they've never really wanted to do, because all the, regional networks would always overpay for it. Right. But now you just have to get, if you're going to do it for 14 or 15 teams, right, you can package sell, a national sales package through the local games. And so I think that they've known that this was coming for 2 years. Listen, if it does suck, there's no excuse. I'll say that. I think they've wanted this. They've known it's coming. They should have a plan in place and be ready to go. But if it's terrible, they have no excuse, because we've known that Bally's is falling apart we knew when they bought the ESPN stuff or the Fox stuff, they were buying a company that was bigger than them. I mean, I remember being like, well, how is this even happening? who is green lighting this sale? Like, this is ridiculous. And it was like they just wanted anyone to buy it so that they could get by the monopoly thing on ESPN. They just wanted to make sure ESPN didn't have all the Fox networks. And so they really didn't even care or look at the fact that the sale had no shot of working. Bally's had no chance of making that financially viable. And so it never should have been allowed to happen in the first place. So they've known that they were in a terrible deal for years. So there's no excuse for them not to be.
Well, the hope is that, I mean, you would hope that it provides a further incentive for a team like the Royals to be competitive and win, because like it's more of an eat what you kill situation where they don't have a guaranteed revenue stream. You know, we've sold the rights to, you know, like I said, we haven't outsourced the broadcast. If you're going to have to go out and sell out your own commercials, it depends mightily on the quality of the team. So if this motivates the team to be competitive, because, you know, if they continue to be an above 500 team that contends every year, this could actually work out in their financial favor in the long run quite a bit. But if they're going to be 156 and 106 again, then they're, you know, they don't have a guaranteed revenue stream, no matter how poorly they play.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be, they'll have a plan. It'll be put in place. It can't be worse than what was, you know, a company that's going bankrupt.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody did point out Bally's is a naming rights deal. Yes, it is. And so Bally's casinos probably should not be thrown under the bus with it. I don't know why you put your name on that when the company's going bad. Sinclair is the parent company. And so Sinclair is the company that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like Bally's is taking a bullet for Sinclair is the evil entity in this, all of this. So,
but you'll have new baseball, and I think it'll be interesting. I think it's something. Listen, they've got a lot of stories. They've got a lot of energy and momentum going right now with the way the ball club played, but they got to get the stadium done, and that means something's going to have to come out here pretty soon. But we're talking about the end of the year. Well, we're halfway through October now. Right. The end of the year is not that far away. Right. Like, we're going to go by Halloween, and then it's going to be Thanksgiving, Christmas, and, you know, first of the year, we're at the Super Bowl. Like, what the hell are you doing? Then we're back to spring training. So they got to get to work and figure out what they're going to do with their stadium. They got to get the TV thing up and running. But I think they've got a lot of momentum, and a lot of, you know, people.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing they could do over the last 6 months was be competitive, and they pulled that off, right? So now that they've done that, we'll probably see a lot of movement on that front. So, I mean, look, ultimately, what makes the TV product watchable is a good team. So, like, you know, I mean, granted, you know, I'm not sure. Yeah, it was funny when you brought up the TV. I thought you were going to talk and criticizing the television product. I thought you were going to talk about the TBS production of the series with the Yankees. I still have no idea if Bobby Witt's relay throw to the plate was offline or not, because I never once saw a replay of what turned out to be a key run scoring, where they looked like they may have had a shot of getting the Yankee runner at the plate, and all I saw was Salvador Perez catching the ball 5 feet away from the plate.
I honestly don't know how it was so bad.
Yeah,
because
it's like,
presumably you hire in-town guys that do the game already. I get it that you normally run one game, and here they are trying to manage 4 games, you know, and so, like, okay, we're stretched thin, but like they were going, like they were just missing shots. Like,
I mean, there's enough people in America to produce 15 Major League Baseball games on any given, like, regular season day. You're trying to tell me you couldn't find a way to do 4? Like you said, the guys who were doing that job from April to September were available, you know. So, it was that part. Watching the series actually on TV was frustrating from that perspective, as much as any Bally's broadcast was. Would annoy me.
I would have gone for the local guys that weren't doing the broadcast and just brought them together the way Fox has done in the past, where they'll bring, you know, Ryan with, you know, somebody from the other team. And I've always thought that was pretty good. I'm like, because, you know, you got to be good. Ryan's so good that he can work with anybody, and you get his insights and knowledge of his team, and then you get another knowledgeable person on the other side. But yeah, that was
I've you know, I grew up with Bob Costas, and I have too much respect for his past to want to go off on him. But, like, yeah, I was willing to give it a shot, and I think I would have enjoyed the games a little bit more had we had the broadcast crew that you're proposing.
Well, and I love the pregame is like David Ortiz, Red Sox, Pedro Martinez, Red Sox, Derek Jeter, Yankees, Alex Rodriguez, Yankees, very diverse think tank they've got for the pre and post as well. There, I mean, way to really mix it up, guys.
That's the price you pay for being on national TV in October, right? Like, fine. That's
Yeah, but I mean, like you can. I don't think that broadcast is that great. I mean, even that part of it. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. So,
all right, Rany, the season is in the books. We'll start looking ahead to next year.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, right? Which we're starting from a fun foundation. We haven't, like I said, we haven't even discussed the minor leagues. We haven't discussed free agency. We have plenty of topics. We're going to be here every week, guys. We're not going anywhere. We got a lot to review. But I do feel like of all the things that I wanted to touch on this offseason, Kevin Seitzer was the one we wanted to get to right away, because he may not be out there long, and I just want to make sure the Royals know, if there's one takeaway from this show, it's bring Kevin home, please.
Yeah. And Fake Date Moore says, thank you both. Thank you. We appreciate that. And also thank you to Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Absolutely. We thank our great friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete for 30 years, Kansas City's best at making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Nationally recognized full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. They're Kansas City's best with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. You've got any problems of any kind with your parking lot or just need a new one, find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner Podcast.